A few things on some of my experiences that I thought might feedback is useful information to our idea of developing our curriculum or enhancing it. I've been to HHL Architects and Flynn Battaglia mostly through acquaintances and asking them what they thought about our BIM content in our first course. And I had some really positive responses and some good feedback. And it occurred to me that we might think about expanding that and actually asking firms what kind of projects should students have attempted in their architectural education, what kinds of constructions, maybe ordering them in levels of importance, and in a survey like a Google Docs that we send out to 20, 30 firms. And we have an evidence-based curriculum, what firms are asking for and how we're providing it. Another thing that we always want to keep in mind, we've discussed this, is this idea of coming up with office standards or school standards for the way we create our documents and publish them and present to each other. We could do a whole lot with drawing template files, anticipating a move to a full digital presentation scheme, the idea of aspect ratios of presentation sheets, the kind of content, every drawing should have a checklist maybe of, does it have a site plan on it? Does it have well-labeled elevations? Are north arrows and scales adequate to the content that we have on it? We've already started to discuss this, and this is really we're not making progress on it, and I think that's it's kind of a shame, and there might be some good underlying reasons for it that I'm really not understanding. But the idea of coordinating our design studio and technical content earlier on, I think, could be very valuable for us. And to that extent, I thought about some ideas about how every year we want new projects so we're not bored by it. And my feedback or thought about that was that idea of newness for us is somewhat of a hindrance in kind of coordinating this idea about what happens in studio to what happens in our tech courses, because our tech courses are really pretty well coordinated to make sure they cover content. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to see variety and flexibility in studio without it having to completely diverge from the content that happens in Tech Studio. So this graphic is just a reminder of that layout. We talked about first year studio and a Tech Studio. Computer Viz could be pushed way earlier into the program. I think students are really ready for these ideas right away, and they could use them right out of the box. Also, a lot of these components that are taught in Computer Viz are in modules, which means they could be dispersed in many other ways without it having to be in the specific format of the course. And in this case, I'm showing one image of a solar study that I do. It takes about an hour to go through an outdoor eating area and with sun angles. And that module is on video and could easily be deployed to any kind of a tech format by any instructor. And the idea of BIM is a powerful tool. We can model. This is a model, and I'll discuss that a little further on at the end of this, where we can really show students how things go together, and then how those construction systems look when they're reported in technical drawing details. And I've expanded on that also now with a CMU steel frame construction that I have as a BIM 360 or Autodesk 360 visualization towards the end of this presentation. And we also have a lot of content that's happening in advanced structures that I think could be pushed back into earlier programs. Students responded very positively to the idea that they would have wished the material was presented earlier, and the feeling that the ideas were not so complex that they couldn't have accepted those into their sophomore and junior year at least. I'm always, thinking about what we're asked for by NAB, and how that in some ways is the threshold bar. It's kind of the minimum standards. At least that's a kind of another way of thinking about it. And the idea that we build on top of that, just like our building codes are minimum standards, NAB is a minimum standard for accreditation, but we could overlay a lot of other value systems on top of that as far as pedagogy and curriculum, so that we don't finish our work at the end goals of what NAB asks, but we can actually start to envision a future kind of unique culture that we develop, still really holding on to the core of NAB, but building on top of it. I'm also very excited about what BIM can do for us as far as advancing our abilities to learn. Not that we just have to teach BIM, but BIM is a tool for helping us to learn, because it's digital, collaborative, science and evidence-based, and integrative. It offers us a host of opportunities in the way we'll work with people in the future, and I think it's a great platform to learn on. I've created a BIM 360 of one of the construction techniques that I thought would be useful in construction tech. This is conventional wood framed and the detailing. And I think it's you can click on this link if you have the Google Docs file and experiment with this drawing. And I've also done one based on CMUs, cores, poured cores, joist frame, truss, I-frame, bar joist is the word I'm looking for, roof construction systems mixed with steel frame. So I'm not sure, however, if we'll ever get to the idea of these more coordinated ways, but I think there's plenty of opportunity to look at sharing things. And I've developed a lot of my course material around the idea of modules, so that course material can actually just be pulled out of one other course and used when it's more relevant in another course. On the long term, I hope to create all kinds of content that fits in a week sequence, that's usually computer-based, so that we have that kind of, we learn it, we draw it, and it helps to reinforce and create a tight feedback loop. And these are 4 that I think could be easily deployed, that we do in 8753, that could be easily used in earlier courses. And then kind of where I'm going, this is an idea of just experimenting with what could happen with computer viz, or computer viz as it moves along. The idea that we create one structural framing system, can have an elevator core in it, 2 forms of egress, steel frame construction, and then the student starts to experiment with ways to modify the facade of the building without changing its actual function, so that the idea of kind of the disconnect between facade and appearance of a building and its function, just as a way of opening up creative opportunities for students, and looking at things that are both adaptive reuse, modifications to existing buildings, and also adhering to tight urban conditions, where you see the building floor plate is built mostly to the lot line, and the expression of architectural design ideas is really limited to that facade plane of the building. So that's a few minutes of the things that I'm excited about participating with in curriculum development. And if you want to use any of my materials, I make them freely available to you. Just contact me. Thank you.